Thank you for joining us for the first in a series of webinars from the Technology Learning Collaborative, or TLC. My name is Kate Rivera, and I'm an independent consultant supporting nonprofits and other mission-driven organizations with project management, program and strategic planning, and more. I'm going to start off just by sharing a little bit with you about the TLC. So the Technology Learning Collaborative is Philadelphia's first professional development organization that's dedicated to digital literacy providers and advocates. Our mission is to drive the digital literacy, access, and inclusion conversation in Philadelphia by promoting professional collaboration, training, and networking among organizations and institutions that have a dedicated interest in moving these areas forward. You can go to our website, which is tlcphilly.org, and I'll also drop the website into the chat for you. And you can learn more about the organization there, as well as see how you can join as a member. This is just the first in a series of webinars that we'll be hosting every month on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So please mark your calendars now for the next webinar, which will be on March 23rd at 2 p.m. And we'll share some insights and information from the Digital Navigator program. If you don't know what that program is, don't worry, because you'll hear a little bit more about it in a few minutes. And so today's topic is on free and low-cost internet options available in Philadelphia. We'll be hearing from Ashley Pollard and Juliet Fink Yates. Both are from the City of Philadelphia's Office of Innovation and Technology. First, Ashley will present on the city's overall digital equity strategy and go into detail specifically on PHLConnectED, which is focused on internet options for K through 12 households. After Ashley's presentation, we'll have about 10 minutes for questions before we turn things over to Juliet, who will discuss low-cost internet options for folks who do not have K through 12 students in their households. And at the end, we'll have time for a few more questions. We will also be emailing out these presentation slides after the meeting, as well as a brief feedback survey. So you'll have all that information as a reference point. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ashley. And Ashley, if you want to go ahead and start pulling up your slides. So Ashley is the K through 12 Digital Access Program Manager in the Office of Innovation and Technology at the City of Philadelphia. In this role, she manages PHLConnectED, Philadelphia's initiative to connect all K through 12 households to free, consistent, and reliable internet access. She also serves as a co-chair of the K through 12 workstream within the city's Digital Equity Coordinating Committee. Ashley, please take it away.
Thanks, Kate. Took a moment to come off mute. Appreciate the introduction, and good afternoon to everybody. Excited to share about PHLConnectED, and as Kate mentioned, I will dig a little bit into the larger digital equity strategy at the city. So to start with an overview, we'll start at the city's digital equity strategy. So before COVID, you know, we've noticed that the world has become a much more digital world, and that basic necessities are transformed on a digital platform. So the city has been thinking about a larger digital equity strategy for some time now, before the pandemic started. And so there are three sort of main strategies as part of the goal. One is the K-12 option, or not option, but focus, which really is where PHLConnectED came into play. So I'll dig into that in a little bit. But the second is reimagining public technology centers. If you are familiar with key spots and from the Philadelphia area, you may remember that key spots served as these technology centers where folks could, go into these spaces, get connected to technology, also digital literacy skills and training. And so we're right now reimagining what the key spots could look like given the pandemic and our shutdowns. And then the third piece is just thinking, more sustainably about the larger, about connecting families across Philadelphia to affordable and reliable internet access. So it's important for folks to have a public space where they can access technology and develop digital literacy skills, but making sure that Philadelphians have those resources and access in their household is also important for the number of things that are just becoming prevalent on a digital space, like healthcare, public benefits, and other online services. So PHLConnectED was born out of the necessity to create a solution for K-12 families given the pandemic shift to virtual learning. So the city, along with our numerous stakeholders and partners, created PHLConnectED to provide free internet access through two solutions. The first is Comcast's wired internet essentials, which is prioritized for households that don't have internet access. And we also included the T-Mobile Wi-Fi hotspots as solutions for families who may need a more mobile option. In our partnership, schools committed to supplying the learning devices, so your tablets, Chromebooks, laptops, so on. And then through the program operations, we've worked to stand up the 211 hotline in partnership with the United Way, where families can call for information about the program and get started with the program enrollment process. And then we've also connected with city and community-based organizations to help with digital navigation and outreach. And I'll dig in a little bit more to that, but we know it's not enough to just provide the access and the devices. We need to make sure that we're connecting with families and following up with resources and skill building resources in particular, so that they can, make use of those resources. So ultimately, our mission is to provide free, consistent, and reliable internet access, as well as those digital support and resources to the K-12 population in Philadelphia so that they can fully participate in their education. And the long-term vision is that not only do the K-12 students and families have access, but that they have really developed tools and skills that they can use to feel empowered to participate in their education. As we operate through the program, we sort of stick to these four guiding principles. The first, quality service; second, racial and economic equity; third, civic engagement; and fourth, transparency. So this first one is us thinking about how folks get connected, how they complete the enrollment process, what is their experience as they're navigating the 211 hotline and engaging with folks who are trying to troubleshoot with them. So we're constantly trying to think about ways to improve the process for families. The second, racial and economic equity. We know that digital access is very, very closely tied to racial and economic equity and inequities in the city of Philadelphia. And so through our efforts, we've identified target geographies in the city that are made up of predominantly Black, Latino populations, low-income populations. And so this really sort of forms the basis of our outreach and our engagement strategies. I mentioned that the partnership is really a multi-partner engagement, and this is necessary so that we can sort of activate our partners as trusted messengers in their own networks to get folks connected, answer questions, and help folks move through the process. And then lastly, transparency. We are a new program. We launched at the end of August 2020. And as we are a new program, we're shifting and the program has evolved over time. So we're committed to making sure that folks are aware of those changes, that they are, that the changes are easy to understand and easy to access. So those are sort of the four real principles that sort of guide the work. And in terms of who's eligible, so I mentioned we launched at the end of August 2020, and that was to families who did not have internet access. So the left side of the screen reflects our initial target criteria. We were committed to connecting families who did not have broadband access, may have only accessed the internet through their mobile phone, maybe experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity, or who had students who completed their remote learning in locations without internet access. Throughout the fall, we heard from families who did have internet access, but were concerned about maintaining it in the future, or expressed that they would not be able to maintain or be able to afford it in the future. So in December, we expanded to families, K-12 families that did have internet access who met one of these criteria on the right side. So may have had internet access, but and participate in public benefit programs like Medicaid, or have students designated as English learners, or have students who receive special education services. And throughout all of our enrollment processes, we use a self-verification model. So families are not submitting any documentation throughout the screening process. If they indicate that they meet one of these criteria, then we deem them as eligible for the program. Okay, I think I'm actually going to move through these slides, and I can come back to these perhaps in Q&A at the end, but I want to make sure I give you all the general overview of the program. But these do reflect some of our program updates that we've made throughout the fall, and you know, in touch with community feedback that we're hearing. So I'll jump to the 211 hotline, the enrollment process. So I mentioned that 211, the 211 hotline is really stood up through a partnership with the United Way. And the 211 hotline really serves as that first stop for families as they're wanting to learn more about PHLConnectED or wanting to complete their screening to enroll in the program. So the 211 hotline can provide, can conduct those screenings, provides instructions for families to connect with Comcast or T-Mobile after they've been deemed eligible. And the 211 hotline can also refer families to digital navigators. Kate mentioned those at the beginning of the webinar. We'll dig in a little bit to that. But again, we know that just providing the access is not enough, and that families need to have access to resources like digital navigation support to help them navigate the access that they do have. So there are two sort of processes through which families are connecting to PHLConnectED and enrolling in the program. And the first here is updated from earlier this month. And this is the hotline support, which is the vast majority, or the way that the vast majority of families are connecting to our program. So in step one, households call the 211 hotline. They dial 211 if they're in the Philadelphia area. And the hotline will conduct screening to determine the household's eligibility. And then third, this third is highlighted here as this is the newer process that we implemented at the beginning of February, where the hotline will distribute the Internet Essentials code or indicate eligibility for a hotspot. And then those families would follow the process for, you know, what next steps for an IE connection or next steps for picking up a T-Mobile hotspot. Now, I mentioned that was the vast majority, the way that the vast majority of families connect. The second process is this proactive outreach that is happening primarily by charters that are partnered with the program. So we know that the LEA's local education agencies have the closest relationships to families. They're also monitoring attendance to online learning. And so they are able to really connect with families and provide them with connection to the program. So in this process, the LEAs conduct general and targeted outreach to families. Families express interest or indicate their need. And then the LEA can determine the best solution for the family, either Comcast's Internet Essentials or a T-Mobile hotspot. Now, once they have that, once a solution has been determined, if they receive an enrollment code for Comcast Internet Essentials, the household will activate that code with Comcast. And this is either through the web-based application form or by calling the Internet Essentials Partnership Hotline. Households will get those devices. So Comcast will ship their router, modem, any other materials that are needed to the household. And then households will self-set up their connection. The kit that is mailed to them is a self-starter kit. So the households can use the instructions and the welcome guide to set up their internet once they receive those materials in the mail. Now, if they've been deemed eligible for a hotspot, the household will pick up the device, and pickup locations are throughout Philadelphia and are really associated with the LEA, local education agency, where the student attends school. So if the family is a district family, if all of their students in the household attend district schools, they would go to a district-based pickup location. Similarly, for charter students, they're going to their charter school to get their hotspot. And in the same way that the Comcast Internet Essentials kit is a self-setup kit, the hotspot is also a self-setup hotspot. It comes in a box and households will use the instructions, turn on the hotspot and get connected to the internet. So what happens after connection? So this is where the digital navigators come in and have provided support not only to the K-12 population, but to all of Philadelphia. So the digital navigators are an initiative that began with the city of Philadelphia and through the Digital Literacy Alliance. And we're connecting with community-based organizations to provide digital navigation services, again, to anybody in Philadelphia, but through PHLConnectED, especially to K-12 families as well. So digital navigators really act as a digital support case manager. They provide really individualized one-on-one dedicated support to households as they're accessing and using their technology. And we've got a list here of the current digital navigators. We recently onboarded Ingles and LULAC, who are providing support to folks across Philadelphia. But again, we really partner with the digital navigators in making referrals to these organizations for families who need support as they're navigating their solution. So some of the some examples of supports that they can offer include, again, related to the K-12 and PHLConnectED, helping families orient to digital learning tools like Google Classroom, for example, help households connect their devices to the internet. So once they have it, maybe they want to get their phone connected. They can help troubleshoot internet speed issues. And then they also exist to really connect to the more longer term sustainable activities like supporting families with connections to jobs, adult education, government services, and then referring families to digital literacy classes and trainings. So you can see that the types of support vary from short-term quick solutions like connecting devices to the internet to sort of longer term connections and thinking sustainably, to really dig into digital literacy and digital skills. And as Kate mentioned, she'll be sharing the deck with you all, which includes the contact information for our digital navigators. And I did mention that the 211 hotline is making referrals to digital navigators as well, but we've included their helpline numbers here, as well as their email addresses. One thing I want to note is that some of the organizations can offer specialized supports to folks in the community. So CMAC offers live chat translation that's available in Spanish, and interpreters are also available for most languages on their helpline calls. LULAC offers support in English and Spanish, and NGLES provides support for people with disabilities. So we've really got a range of support that's offered through these groups. And then communications and outreach. So I mentioned that one of our guiding principles is racial and economic equity. And we think a lot about that as we are organizing our communications and outreach strategies, and as we're trying to reach folks in the community to let them know about PHLConnectED and also help them enroll in the program. So these strategies are sort of our three pillars of communications and outreach for the program. So we of course do very general, communications and awareness that is created for our LEAs as well as other PHLConnectED stakeholders, really trying to leverage our partnerships and communicate through those channels. And then we also are really pushing on our external outreach. So this is more about connecting directly with families, with the community. So it does involve that sort of informational piece with flyers and messaging, but also includes this targeted outreach. So this is something we're digging into a little bit more now, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. But this enables us to directly contact families that are likely to be eligible for the program, encourage them to dial 211, complete enrollment, and of course, make referrals to digital navigator services or any other referrals that may be necessary. And then lastly, our paid and earned media. So in the fall, we did a paid media campaign for several months in the fall. And this was through radio ads, social media ads. We saw that the radio ads provided had a great reach. We reached over 3 million listeners through that campaign across those few months. And we're getting ready to gear up again for a spring paid media campaign and really focusing again on radio. We saw that Facebook outperformed any of the other social media platforms, so we may post on social media via Facebook again. And outside of the paid media, we also take advantage of opportunities like press releases that the city does, or jumping onto a mayor's press release and making sure that we're boosting the message that way. So those are the three main strategies that sort of form the outreach and communications work. But I mentioned this targeted outreach piece, so I'll dig in a little bit to that, and that's what we're really excited about. And as we're really ramping up our spring outreach. So again, connected to racial and economic equity, our GEO team at the city identified these 10 target zip codes throughout the city that are places with likely to have low access to broadband and or are low-income households or have a higher concentration of low-income households. So we've identified these target zip codes as the locations where we're really focused for outreach, as well as our communications and targeting our messaging to families in those communities. So our outreach partners to date include our Digital Navigator outreach team. So the Digital Navigators serve as navigators to support folks with digital access skills, but we've partnered with them in outreach as well. So CMAC, the Drexel Excite Center, and CLC have been working with us since the fall, have been phone banking and flyering with their existing client list. As we're gearing up for this spring outreach, they'll be doing a mixture of phone banking and door-to-door canvassing that will be specifically to those K-12 households in those zip codes that we identified. And then we're just this week actually getting ready to sort of, bring all of our outreach teams together. So we've got a few more CBOs that we'll be partnering with, and we'll be really ramping up our phone banking and door-to-door canvassing, again, among those 10 target zip codes. And then outside of the CBO realm, we've partnered with the Mayor's Commission on Aging and their senior volunteers who had phone banking experience with Philly Counts and getting the word out about the census and encouraging folks to complete the census in 2020. And so they are actively conducting, they're in the phone bank right now and conducting phone calls to K-12 families in a couple of the zip codes that I shared, and have made close to 5,000 calls to date, which is really exciting. And again, all of this work is to raise awareness for PHLConnectED and help families enroll in the program. And I've also included for your review, when Kate shares the materials, appendix and FAQs, so you can dig in a little bit more. We'll of course have a Q&A now, but I wanted to share that one, it's exciting to present to you all, share updates, share about the program, where we're at, and we would love your support in spreading the word. You can tell folks to dial 211. We are making sure, well, one, we need your support in being trusted messengers. So promoting trust, encouraging families to complete their enrollment. And we also are, we're aligned with the quality service guiding principle. We're hearing from families and updating our policies and enrollment processes to make the process easier for families. So we can, we've got a process to escalate issues that may arise for families. And so folks can push for escalating issues for resolution so that we can hear families' needs and then resolve them. And while I'm on that, I'll actually just go back just to show you a little bit more information on the issue escalation. It is in the program updates section that I didn't dive into, but I do want to point it out. So we have created an issue escalation form to track families' needs or issues that they may be having through the program. This was created in the fall and has really helped us in identifying issues that may arise, and again really just allows us to track these and solve the issues as they come to the table. So folks can report issues if they think that they're eligible but are somewhere along the process or told they're not, or they're having difficulty getting in contact with the 211 hotline, or may have trouble activating their Internet Essentials code. The issue categories sort of run the gamut, and we want to hear about all of them and help families in getting those issues resolved. So it lives on our website, phila.gov/PHLConnectED, and folks can also report issues by dialing 211 and speaking to one of the hotline support staff and getting their issue reported that way. So I am going to end my slideshow, and I believe, Kate, we've got some time for questions. So happy to take questions, and I'll also check in on the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Yeah, we do have plenty of time for questions. So folks, if you have questions, please feel free to type your questions in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature that Zoom has under the participants tab if you want to ask your question verbally, and you can then unmute you and have you share. I just want to remind you though that Juliet will be presenting next on internet options for folks who do not have K through 12 students in their household. So if your questions are on that topic, I recommend holding on to them because you'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. All right. We have a question in the chat. Can providers get bulk approval for clients/students? Is there well, there's 3 questions. Is there one-stop shop for digital Navigator access? And what are the criteria for hotspot eligibility?
Great questions. I will answer the second and third first, and then have a clarifying question on the first. So one-stop shop for digital Navigator access. The 211 hotline sort of serves as that one-stop shop. So the 211 hotline can make a referral to a digital Navigator organization based on their needs. So again, if it's a family that may need translation or interpretation services, CMAC, for example, may be the organization that 211 makes the referral to. So again, it's just based on those folks' needs. So I hope that answers that question. 211 can make those referrals. And then criteria for hotspot eligibility. That's a great question. So when we launched the program, we prioritized hotspots for those families who needed a more mobile solution. So that criteria that speaks to families who may be experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness, we prioritized and continue to prioritize hotspots for those families. Or even for that 4th category of students who are learning maybe at their grandma's house Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday through Friday they're at another caregiver's home, and maybe those places don't have internet. So a mobile solution is prioritized there. So that's the criteria in a sense, but we also know that there are households that can't be connected to Internet Essentials. Comcast does have the capabilities of connecting most households across Philadelphia, but some may not be wired for it. And so in those cases as well, families will receive a hotspot. And Stephen, for the first question, I'm not sure what you're referring to when you say providers. So I'm happy to dig into that a little more if you can clarify what you mean by providers.
Sure. Briefly, many of us on this call represent or serve a population of clients who many of them would be eligible for Philadelphia Connected. Can one of us walk up a bunch of names and addresses to the city and get a bulk approval on them and streamline that process so that our clients don't have to make those calls individually?
That's a great question. So we have done that in a couple of cases, for example, with students who may be residing at a shelter. So what I will do, I think, so in the slides is the PHLConnectED email, but I'll drop this in the chat. Why don't you reach out to me if you have that in mind, and we can dig in a little bit more about that. I think it's a great question.
Ashley, can I add to that, to Stephen's question? Do you mind? So Stephen, I think that if they are all at one school, the schools themselves have been doing that. They've been sort of assigning a solution to those students. So if you're working within a particular school, the answer would obviously be yes, that school can, if it's a charter school in particular, can get this sort of bulk approval. Their processes are where they have to document that in the student information system. Everything ultimately has to get documented into the student information system. And if they are at the district, if they're district students, there's sort of a slightly different process. I would follow up with Ashley. If you are a nonprofit and have a bunch of students, I think it's a little bit more challenging because the solution is really based on that family and assessing what their address is and really making sure that we can, and what their need is. And so we really just want to make sure that they, are eligible, that we know where they are and that they get the right solution. And that could be different for each student potentially. So just some clarity on that one. But yes, follow up with Ashley. I think that is the best strategy.
Great. Our next question is interpretation available on the hotline and for digital navigators?
Yes, interpretation services are available. So currently, and you'll see this in our FAQs and in our communications materials, folks can dial 211 and they'll be able to get connected to somebody to talk about PHLConnectED. When you call 211, you'll hear to press 1 for English and to press 8 for Spanish is what it currently says. And we're working with the 211 hotline on updating this language to be more clear that any translation or interpretation service can be, is available by pressing 8. So yes, on the 211 hotline, those services are available. And then I think the second part was digital navigators. So specific digital navigators have those interpretation services available. That's indicated in the slides and includes CMAC, which offers interpretation for most languages. They do a variety of languages, and LULAC offering support in English and Spanish as well. And I apologize, I realize I'm still sharing my screen, so let me stop there so you can see a little bit better.
Great. Okay, so our next question is, what are the most challenging issues that you've run into as far as getting people connected? There's also a follow-up, any issues or tips for collaborating with internet service providers?
Thanks for that question. So I think that my mind goes to outreach when I hear this question or when I think about the challenges. We know that we're talking about connecting families that may be the hardest to reach in our community. And so, connecting with them to let them know, hey, this service is available, and to garner trust in that interaction, I think is a challenge and something that we're really trying to improve upon. That's why we're partnering with those community-based organizations that have existing relationships in their communities, who know the communities, maybe have provided services, or were distributing meals for families months ago. So we're really leaning into those relationships to build that trust and garner the trust. So that's what comes to mind immediately. And though we're doing our outreach and communications, there's more that can be done. Folks, it's a new program, so making sure that folks are aware of the program in general, regardless of how we're trying to target, is something we're always working towards. So I would say that's what immediately comes to mind. And in terms of collaborating with ISPs, so we've had a great partnership with Comcast and T-Mobile. I mentioned civic engagement as one of our guiding principles, and we would not be as far along as we are without the partnership and collaboration with the ISPs. As you all may be aware, Comcast is headquartered in Philadelphia, and so really, maintains a strong commitment to community development in the city. and are really receptive to, partnering and hearing feedback. So, we lean into those relationships, and, T-Mobile, though they are not a Philadelphia-based company, they're also, nationwide are committed to digital access. And I know they do bulk sort of support for adult ed populations, for K-12 populations. So I think the ISPs are willing to collaborate. It's about like leaning in and into what they're what they're offering and what they're passionate about in communities, but it's there.
Great. And then the final question that we have in the chat is is there an updated communications toolkit available to share with graphics and text copy that folks here can include in their newsletter and social media platforms to help get the word out?
Yeah, absolutely. I can provide a link. So it's a live link. So the edits are, it's always up to date if you use that link. So I will provide it in here, and I can also include it in the deck itself, so that when Kate shares that out, you can click on the link there. And again, it's live, a live link, so always updated.
Okay, great. Well, Ashley will be sticking around, so if you do think of any other questions for her, we'll have time for some additional questions after Juliet's presentation. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Juliet. So Juliet Fink Yates is the Digital Inclusion Fellow in the Office of Innovation and Technology for the City of Philadelphia. She has been working on addressing digital equity since 2001, when she was managing a small ISP for 10,000 low-income Philadelphians without internet access for the Critical Path Internet Project. For over 10 years, she worked as the Chief Alerting Officer at Philadelphia Fight Community Health Centers at the intersection of adult education, technology, and healthcare. In 2010, she wrote, in collaboration with the City of Philadelphia, the Broadband Stimulus Grant that brought $5.4 million to low-income communities to set up computer labs, which became known as Key Spots, which are still around today, and 77 locations reached out to cultivate the key partners involved in that grant and help to design the structure of that program, overseeing a team that managed 28 of those key spots. She's a founder of this group, the Technology Learning Collaborative, and was a member of the city's Digital Literacy Alliance until she joined the city in March 2020 as the first Digital Inclusion Fellow. So in her current role as Digital Inclusion Fellow, she is charged to build the community of those in Philadelphia interested in addressing digital inclusion and help support innovative digital equity practices in Philadelphia. Juliet, please take it away.
That was much longer than I remembered it being, Kate. Thanks all.
You're just that impressive.
So I'm gonna hopefully share my slides and get started here. My goal, what's going on? There we go. Okay, so my goal is really what Ashley shared is the only program that exists currently in Philadelphia that offers free internet for a substantial population, substantial number of our residents, our K-12 population. So I'm really going to cover for everyone else, all of our non-K-12 residents, what options are out there for them? What can we do if you're in services? How can you support getting folks connected to the internet? What's out there and available? I'm not going to pretend that all of these are wonderful options. I'm just going to show you what exists, and we can talk more about it as part of this presentation. I'm also, one thing I will say is I'm not going to cover every single internet option. I'm really just focused on those that have low-cost programs. So we're going to cover, I'm going to about 4 different options right now. I'll cover Comcast Internet Essentials in a little bit more detail. I'll talk about mobile hotspots. I want to talk a little bit about Verizon Fios' Lifeline program, and then a brand new emergency broadband benefit that's coming out of the FCC, and that should be available to our residents in the next month or so. So stay tuned for that. But before we begin, I don't know if you guys can see all of this. I really kind of wanted to level set with some definitions. What are we talking about when we talk about broadband? So I'll go through these fairly quickly. I just want to highlight a couple things. Right now, broadband is, there's 4 types of broadband connections. Fiber optic, so that's typically your Fios, Verizon Fios option, wireless, DSL, and satellite, all can be considered broadband. However, I'm gonna right now say DSL and satellite are pretty old, or technologies that don't provide a lot of speed. And so when we talk about broadband, mostly what we're talking about is fiber optic and wireless technologies right now. The other thing we hear a lot about is bandwidth, the maximum amount of data that can be transmitted over an internet connection in a given amount of time. And a lot about, you may have heard a lot about speed recently. So that's the amount of data that can be sent in a given amount of time. So the FCC's definition of broadband is 25 megabits per second down and 3 megabits per second up. There's a huge debate going on about whether this is an adequate definition of broadband. We've learned a lot from this pandemic about what kinds of speeds are needed. Really for our remote learners, but for many families, all of whom are working from home. Typically, this 25 megabits per second down and 3 megabits per second up right now covers fairly adequately, probably 2 people using simultaneous Zoom meetings. You're going to find slower speeds as you go, as you add more use to the internet in your home, for example. The other thing you might hear a lot about is a data cap or throttling. So a data cap is an artificial restriction imposed on the transfer of data over a network. Basically, the internet service providers cap how much data they can send, they'll send to you at a time. And when they do, they'll either charge you an overage fee if you go over it, so you end up getting a large fee on your bill or additional fee on your bill, or they'll throttle, meaning they'll slow you down once you go over that speed. So there are 2 things that could be happening sometimes when we talk about slow speeds or poor service, that folks may be going over their data cap. And then the other things I want to point out, we talk a lot about Wi-Fi and hotspots. So Wi-Fi is wireless networking technology. Typically uses radio waves to provide wireless high-speed internet access without a physical wire connecting it. I think most of us are familiar with that concept. What I think sometimes gets confused a little bit as we talk about Wi-Fi when we're actually talking about having a wired line internet. For example, if you have Comcast, you have a wired internet connection, you may connect to that wired line internet connection wirelessly through their router modem device. But technically what you have is a wired line connection and you're using Wi-Fi to connect your devices to it. And then a hotspot really is defined as sort of this geographic location in which an access point provides public wireless broadband network. But then there's also something that you might hear of called the MiFi, which is technically a brand name, which is a device, a wireless router device that can act as a Wi-Fi hotspot. That is the MiFi device is our T-Mobile hotspot, right? That will provide wireless access to a computer in a very short range, typically. So just some common definitions so that we are all working from the same set of information. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Comcast Internet Essentials first. So this is the most common solution in Philadelphia. There are probably over 20,000 households using Comcast Internet Essentials. It is not an essential solution. I wanna acknowledge that they are probably the best internet service provider providing a low-cost solution for folks, in that they have done quite a bit of work to make it relatively easy for folks to sign up and get access to Internet Essentials. It's $9.99 a month. It's the lowest cost of any option. They still have a 60-day free promotional period. So for our K-12 households that do not have internet right now, they can still get 60-day free if they sign up before June 3rd, 2021. So that's important. Now's the time to get those folks signed up into this option. After that, they'll get charged a $9.99 fee. It does have, it will not have a data cap, 21, which is really good news. This is another big thing that Comcast instituted. And beginning in March, they have increased their baseline speed to megabits per second down and 5 megabits per second up, which is substantial. That should really be able to serve several people in the household using the internet, streaming, and being on these multiple Zoom calls at the same time. I'm saying that it should work for 3 people at the same time. We are assessing this still. We don't have definitive numbers on that. They haven't provided us definitive numbers on that. So we're still going to learn about how much 50 megabits per second down and 5 megabits per second up can really support. We're learning a lot about that right now. A lot of people have been, because Comcast is such a big, is probably the largest internet provider in Philadelphia, a lot of people have had it in the past, and they have gone into debt with Comcast in the past. And it's been a real barrier for folks to get connected if they had previous debt to Comcast. However, outstanding debt owed to Comcast can enroll in Internet Essentials through June 30th, 2021. With this caveat, if you try to enroll, they will likely try to put you on a payment plan to start collecting some of that debt, but they shouldn't prevent you from enrolling in their plan right now. And so if you hear about this, we want to know. And particularly if you hear about this in their K-12 family, submit an issue escalation form. It's the best way for us to handle that situation really quickly. So just to put a plug in for Ashley's program there. The other things that you should know about this program is that you don't need to submit a social security number. They will take other forms of ID, including the I-10, which is something that a lot of immigrant families use. And that's something actually that one of our advocates asked Comcast to include, and we asked Comcast to include it, and then they did, national. So Philadelphia, yay, made that happen. So you don't have to submit your social security number. However, they will ask you to submit documentation if you don't submit your social security number of who you are. They have many 35 different types of documentation that they will request. And so it can be, the Philly ID example is inclusive of that type of documentation. So folks have a number of things that they could choose from to submit that documentation. This one, though, is the biggie, and I don't have any way around it right now, unfortunately. If they've been on Xfinity and they can no longer afford it and want to downgrade to Internet Essentials, there is a 90-day wait period before they can sign up for Internet Essentials. This wait period does not exist if they are a K-12 household and want to enroll in PHLConnectED. They don't have to wait 90 days. We'll get them enrolled immediately, but for everybody else, they do. And so they could be stuck without internet service for 90 days, which is why knowing what some of these other options are probably a good idea. These are all the things that help qualify you and make you eligible for Comcast Internet Essentials. For the school lunch program, it's irrelevant because we have PHLConnectED, but if you are out in Philadelphia, any student who is enrolled in a school lunch program or if the school itself is deemed eligible for school lunch, they qualify for this program. So some of the best practices that we've worked on with Comcast really is if it's possible to use their online form. Now, this is a little bit tricky, obviously, because folks without internet might have trouble using an online form, but this is where the advocates and the social workers and our digital navigators come in, where they can really help somebody sign up on the online form and get their application started. There have been reports of folks who called Comcast customer service and then have been trying to up folks who are interested in IE. And if they go through the online system, they don't have to deal with that, which is one advantage of the online of signing up online. However, if there's an issue with the address, and this might be that it's not serviceable or Comcast, maybe it's part of in a large building with multiple addresses that have a contract with Verizon, for example, they'll get punted to the hotline. They won't be able to fill out the online form. The other issue is if they do have debt, they'll get punted to the hotline, so they'll have to call anyway. And if they currently have Xfinity, they're going to get punted to the hotline, and if they want to downgrade. So all of those things will force people the online form and have them go into the hotline. So I just did some pros and cons around this option. It really is the best bang for the buck. They have a long history, Comcast, of providing low-income residents with service. Like I said, over 20,000 residents, I should say, are currently using this option in Philadelphia. That's no small number. People have been able to sign up successfully, and many people are using it successfully. It's a relatively simple form, and from our perspective, it really delivers home access to the entire family as a wired line solution. The cons are that not every family is stably housed, so it's not a solution for those who are more transient. It's not possible, and many renters themselves may be in homes that they may be renting a room in a home and they can't get it just to a room. It has to be to a particular address. And so if they're somebody who is renting, it's called an illegal room. I don't really like to use that term, but they won't be able to use this option. It may not provide enough speed depending on the household situation. If you have 5, 6 people living in a household, it may not work for you. It may not be fast enough. We know that customer service has told people the wrong info, and that's why we kind of have close contact with Comcast to say this hearing over and over again. We need you guys to retrain your new customer service staff. And it does require, even once they fill out the form, step process that a router and modem has to get shipped to the household. They have to self-install it and connect it and then be connected to that. That can be really challenging for a lot of families. It's not the easiest. It's not like plugging in a refrigerator and then it works, right? There's a number of steps that somebody has to go through that can make internet connectivity a bit more challenging. So let's talk about the hotspot option. So if you are a nonprofit organization and you want to get a whole bunch of hotspots and distribute them to residents in need, this is the option for you. I will say that you can do a service contract, like an individual contract with Comcast. If you wanted to purchase, 500 accounts with Comcast, you could do that too, or 100 accounts with Comcast and have your own contract with them. They will happily work with you. And I think somebody on this asked about how to partner with the ISPs. So if you do have a defined service agreement with Comcast, you could work with them on that. But I think that largely what most nonprofits do is this option, is purchase bulk hotspots for their folks. There's 2 groups that do it, Mobile Citizen and Mobile Beacon. I kind of confuse them. They both run on the T-Mobile Sprint network. They both roughly offer a $10 a month cost for nonprofits. So you have to pay for the full year for the nonprofit. And then there's a device fee at $60 to $70 depending on the type of device. But you get unlimited data, and you get the speeds that you get really range. So the sort of downside to the hotspot option is that the speeds are really variable depending on the wireless traffic that's going on in that moment. So they could be anywhere from just 4 megabits per second down to 20 megabits per second down. It's good for 1 to 2 people using it at a time. But beyond that, I would suggest that you're going to need, more than one hotspot. If you apply nonprofits, you just have to usually provide proof of a state tax exemption. And the other important thing to note is that it doesn't have a huge range. So you have to have this device right next to you when you use it. Or if 2 people are using it, they have to be sitting really pretty close to each other in order to use it effectively. So you know, these are great options for nonprofits if they want to invest a little bit of money or they get some grant money and to provide, you know, a certain number of clients that they want to provide a year-long worth of internet service for. Maybe if you're a homeless shelter or, you know, doing mobile healthcare or something like that. You can also directly contract with any of the, you know, major providers like AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon. Typically get a $17 to $19 per month device monthly charge. Device fee is waived. It comes out in the wash. It's a little bit more that way, but so you go through either these mobile citizen, mobile beacon options, or you can work directly with the ISP.
Julia, it looks like we have a question, if you don't mind pausing
Sure.
for a moment. Lamont, did you want to, I guess,
Is
looks
it
like,
Lamont?
yeah.
You want to, do I unmute him? Let me see. Okay.
I'm here. Sorry. I had unmuted myself. My name is Lamont Twine. I'm a Philadelphia resident for 58 years, and I'm heavily involved in the community as well. And I'm basically trying to reach out to different nonprofits and offer additional resources. What I would like to see in Philadelphia, if we can try to reach out to these faith bases, such as a church or a masjid, and let them know that you guys offer these services. That way we can get some of these young people. I don't know if y'all travel through Philadelphia. If you stand on the corner of 40th and Market and walk from 40th and Market to 63rd and Market, you see some able-bodied young people that's just standing around with no which way to go. I can remember years ago when I was in high school, Bartram High School in Southwest Philadelphia, the school district of Philadelphia offered driver's education. We need to bring some of these simple, basic programs back. What better way to do them is to provide these faith bases, these services that y'all offering, and we can teach these courses inside of a church, such as home economics. I had that in middle school, and driver's education in high school. We got to bring these basic programs back, and I can guarantee you that we can bring these programs back into a faith-based. We got millions of churches throughout Philadelphia, storefront churches, other faith bases, and we can bring these programs into these faith bases. We can get some of these young folks off these corners. And that's what my primary goal is, to bring and introduce programs right into the faith base. And I can guarantee you, I can get folks into these faith bases to educate them about something simple as financial literacy. Folks don't know how to manage their money. So we got to bring programs into your faith base and bring that internet right there in that church. And we do that, we can make a change in Philadelphia.
I agree with you.
Bring that crime rate down. We got to come together, and we need all forces and all folks to come together collectively and network with each other and bring some change in the city of Philadelphia, and put some pressure on these elected officials as well to be able to put 10 computers in the church so that we can bring some instructors such as myself to teach basic computer skills. I used to volunteer at the Career Link and help people with resumes and all that sort of thing right here downtown Philadelphia, 1617 JFK Boulevard on the second floor at the Career Link in 2009. We got to put stuff in the faith bases.
Lamont,
I
I
don't know if you
agree with
guys,
you.
I don't know if you guys walk around in the streets of Philadelphia or Kensington or whatever. We got to bring programs in on faith basis because you see the Philadelphia Police Department is under siege. 6,000 police officers is not going to save the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah. You know, Lamont, I used to ride my bike around to all the neighborhoods and provide computer classes as well. Back a little while ago. So I hear you. I think you're right that faith-based groups are going to be really important in this solution. And I'm always happy to do presentations or talk to any groups if you want to, and I'll drop my email in the chat too, if you want to reach out to me about that. I want to be mindful of time and just want to go through a couple of these additional options and then open it up for more questions at the end, if that's all right with everybody. So if you're a nonprofit and you don't have the money to buy in bulk, individuals can purchase their own hotspots as well. So there are two organizations that you can directly as an individual a low-cost hotspot. Human IT and PCs for People are the two that I know of that do it. It's a little bit of a larger monthly cost. It's $10 a month, and the person would have to pay the device fee, which is $100 a month. But plans are prepaid. There's no credit check. They can do 1 month at a time or 3 months at a time of internet service, and they can keep adding more internet service as they need it, or as they maybe don't need it or can't afford it. So a little bit more nimble. The speeds I said are the same as the profit versions, and there's no data or overage charges. You do have to be 200% below the poverty level, and they will ask for documentation. So likely someone may need some help signing up. But one thing I do know is that at least in Human IT, they have customer service that will walk folks through their options and sign them up and help them sign up, just like our digital navigators do in Philadelphia. And so they can call and get that hotspot signed up. Very similar with PCs for People. So some pros and cons. The really nice thing about the hotspot is they're super simple to set up. They are a great option for nonprofits who have the resources to provide connectivity to program participants. They're much better for our unstably housed populations or those maybe renting rooms in homes or any other issues that people may have getting internet in their home. They don't, for whatever reason, and they are a decent price. The biggest con is the device fee barrier. That's going to be the biggest con for folks because not everybody has $100 right away to spend on internet connectivity. You also, as I said, have to sit close to the device. It can be challenging for people who may need to be in locations, or if you're in a shelter, you may have, your kids in one place and you're in another. So it may not work for a family. I mean, kids in one part of the shelter and you're in another part during the day, something like that. So the more people are in the home, the more devices may be needed, which can significantly increase the cost. So if you have a home with 5 people, you may need 2 or 3 of those devices to get enough internet connectivity for your home. And then now you're talking about, $45 a month, not $15 a month. The other thing that we find is that the devices are easily stolen or lost. They break easily because they're so small, and the power cords are easily lost. So you lose a power cord, and then you can't use the device because you can't plug it in anymore to recharge it. So that is something we have heard that happens. And so just be aware that they are sometimes short-term solutions. The other option that I'm going to talk about is Verizon Fios. So Fios is really the fastest internet out there. And if you are eligible for Lifeline, you can qualify to get Verizon's low-cost internet, Fios internet in your house. So they advertise it as $19.99 a month, so $20 a month, but in fact, also a router fee. So really, it's $35 a month. It's still, you know, relatively low cost compared to other options. And the setup fee, the $99 setup fee will be waived if you are qualified for Lifeline. The speed is fast. It is 200 megabits per second down and up, symmetrical it's called, right? So it's super fast. This is a really good option for your families who may meet this income eligibility, who have Verizon Fios in their neighborhood, and who have a larger family. There are some challenges though with it. So only one person in the household can use the Lifeline option. So if a family qualifies for Lifeline and they already use it to get their mobile phone, they can't also use it to get Verizon's Fios Lifeline up. You will absolutely need to submit a social security card and documentation of your birth. So if you are undocumented, this is not the option that you can use. And there's substantial documentation that you'll have to submit. You have to sign up first for Lifeline through the National Verifier program over here. And then go to Verizon to sign up for this particular internet access. So pros and cons quickly: fastest speed for the best price, really good for large households, no data caps. However, the cost is still high, $35 a month, pretty high. Router fee. Fios is not available in every neighborhood in Philadelphia, let alone outside of Philadelphia, for those of you who may be joining from outside the region. Signing up for Lifeline is really challenging. I've heard lots and lots of people complain about this. They do have a phone line that you can call and sign up over the phone, but it does still require that you submit a lot of documentation. Right now, that can be really challenging for folks just to submit documentation if they don't have internet access. So it's a real barrier. Home access, same thing as Comcast, not always possible for those who are renters or unstably housed. And here's the kicker: I don't actually know anybody who's using this. So I want to know. We do talk to Verizon at the city quite a bit, but they won't tell me who's using it, which is, you know, their privacy protocols. So if you sign up successfully for this, I would like to know so that we understand what challenges they may have had in actually using this solution. Last thing I'm going to talk about, and I'll try to go quickly, is that there is a new emergency broadband benefit coming. It has been allocated already. It was just passed in the December stimulus. Households, any household that is eligible, and so they are eligible if they are Lifeline eligible, if they are eligible already for Comcast essentials, they're eligible. If they have children eligible in free and reduced school lunches, if they have a household member who's a Pell Grant recipient, if they have a household member who's unemployed recently, they're eligible for that. Super exciting. They'll get $50 a month for their internet service. And it may include, we're not sure about this yet, any level or tier of service from an ISP. So if they have Xfinity, they may be able to put their $50 towards their Xfinity bill or their regular Verizon Fios bill if they are paying for that. It's a household choice model, and that means that the household should be able to select what internet service they want. However, the payments don't go to the household, they go to the ISP. So the household will sign up, they'll select their internet provider, and the payment goes to the internet provider, and then the internet provider provides them with the discount on their bill. That's how it'll work. It also will include a low-cost device benefit, only one per household, and each eligible household will be charged between $10 and $15 for the device. And there are some really nice measures in there. So the ISPs will make sure that families don't have to pay an early termination fee if they cancel their internet service. They will not be subject to a mandatory waiting period like that 90-day wait period. but they will be subject, the households, to the participating ISP's terms and conditions. So it's really dependent on those ISPs who participate, what terms and conditions they ultimately set up about which tier service they're willing to provide folks at $50 benefit a month. So this is all right now, all the comments have been submitted to the FCC, and they're going to make recommendations for the program. And so we will learn more in the coming weeks how this ends up. But one thing I did hear is they suggested that folks begin signing people up under the national verifier now, which is the same thing you use for Lifeline, because if they qualify there, they will automatically qualify for this program for any of these ISPs. So if you work with families now to get them signed up to the national verifier, you can get them into the program more quickly. And the more quickly we get into the program, the more quickly we can show the government that it's needed and that they should make it a long-term program. Right now, it's a short-term benefit that will likely last not beyond 6 months. So here's some opportunities and challenges related to it. So it's going to allow a number of families to get some relief in Philadelphia. It may allow families, I say may because we don't know what tier service that ISPs will provide. It may allow families access to broadband at the speeds they want or need. And if it works, it really could help establish a longer term federal subsidy for broadband, which is a big goal that we have here in Philadelphia. We don't know how long the benefit will last. It could last 1 month. So the program likely will last to 6 months or until the money runs out. So when the money runs out, that could be after 3 months, depending on how many people sign up. Families will likely be required to sign up, and we don't know how this will happen yet. We think it'll be through the national verifier, but we're not entirely sure. We know that any additional signups are barriers for families. Any additional step that they have to take is going to be hard for them. Allowing each ISP to run their program really poses challenges. This is the same kinds of challenges that we have with the Lifeline program. And the reason it's challenging, sorry, I have a munchkin behind me. I'm not done. The reason it's challenging is because we in Philadelphia called every Lifeline provider, and half of them at their call centers had no idea what we were talking about. So you really run into a problem where they have customer service agents who have no idea what the program is across the board at the ISPs, and that could be a real disaster for folks. There's also been no funding for marketing or outreach to communities about this program. So it's reliant on all of us now who know about it to get the word out, to sign people up. So that's the end. I'll take questions now. It's a lot of information, but you will get this presentation and you're welcome to share it.
Great. We do have a couple questions in the chat, and folks, if you have other questions for Juliet or for Ashley, feel free to type those into the chat or use the raise hand function. So the first question is regarding Mobile Citizen and Mobile Beacon. And the question is, are they actively fulfilling bulk orders right now? It sounds like earlier or last year, I guess they had some understandable inventory and fulfillment challenges with the pandemic.
Yeah, so yes, at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody literally grabbed up hotspots and available. I am not hearing that that is happening now. If you are, please let me know. I think if you're looking probably for several thousand, it would be hard. If you're looking for 100, it would probably be easier for you to get right now. Another option, if you're having trouble with them, is to go directly to the T-Mobile and reps, or the AT&T or Sprint, or I'm sorry, Verizon directly rather than through Mobile Citizen or Mobile Beacon. But I've heard that the supply has loosened up.
Great. And the next question was regarding the Verizon Fios Lifeline program, which you mentioned there's a requirement to pay a monthly fee for the router. So the question is, what if you have your own router?
Great question. I would say that I don't know enough yet about Verizon because I don't know who are using this particular part of the program. So if you have your own, it's a great instance of If somebody has a test case scenario and tell us if it would work, that would be really, really valuable. Have your own router. Can you get the cost down to that $20 a month fee? It's possible. It's possible that nonprofits, for example, could purchase some routers and just to help cover that particular cost for families. I'm not 100% sure. I can dig into that.
Great. And then we do have some folks just sharing some resources here in the comments, which is great. Let's see what else. Oh, there is just a question about the websites for these resources. So we will be sending out the slide decks from this webinar either later today or tomorrow to everyone who registered. So you will get all of the slides that have all of the links and detailed information there that you'll be able to reference. And if you have any further questions, you can please feel free to reach out to us. Are there any other questions for Juliet or Ashley? And this is a lot of information, a lot to take in.
This website, generationsonline.org/families, is that for seniors only?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes,
Yes.
Katie. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to put my camera on for you. So Generations Online, it is designed for older adults. Anybody can learn on it. It's a free tutorial. It teaches how to use. There's 3 versions, so it could be for iPads, Android devices, Amazon Fire devices. It also teaches smartphones. It also has a link for like Zoom. So like say somebody knows how to use some part of technology, but they don't really know how to do Zoom and you want to send a link, you can just send the link to the Zoom to teach them how to get into a Zoom meeting. So it's free. It's from the app stores. It's also free as a website. So that link will take you to some family guides, the link to the free websites, and the links to the free website, the apps, sorry. And we're here in Philly. I mean, we're located here in Philly. So just anybody can share it with. We just like to help seniors.
I can vouch for Generations Online. They're a great group.
Thank you, Juliet.
Okay, great. If there are no further questions, I just dropped a link into the chat. I'll also email this out. But we just have a very quick survey asking you to give us some feedback on the webinar today. As I mentioned, this is the first in a series of webinars that we'll be hosting this year, again on the 4th Tuesday of each month. So we're looking for your feedback on how we can make these better and also what some other topics are that you may want to see covered. So if you have a moment now, you could just click that link and fill out the survey. Julia also shared her email in the chat. And then again, if you want to save the date, our next webinar is going to be on March 23rd at 2 p.m. We'll hear more from the organizations that are running the Digital Navigator program. So they'll have a lot of kind of lessons learned and insights into all of these processes, as well as helping folks get devices as well as internet. And I think that's it. So thank you everyone so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.